Hello, today I want to talk a bit about alpha images, otherwise known as height maps, displacement images, and some people refer to them as bas relief images. They're basically black and white images on a gradiated scale of values. From light to dark. The light areas will be more raised than the darker areas, with black being non-raised, so basically transparent. So ZBrush is a program I use to do digital sculpting, and it has these default set of alphas that you can select, and then you can use on a model that's been subdivided a few times to get more detail. So with this, I just used a circle 3D, and then I went into edit mode, make polymesh 3D, and then I subdivided it 6 times. I could probably do it again, get even more detail there. And then if you put the stroke on, drag rectangle and select an alpha, you can displace the geometry with the image. So basically the focal shift value, if I set that to high, that won't show up more. It'll blur it out at the edges the higher that is. So by setting it to -100, I'm setting it to the basically how the image looks here. The intensity slider controls how strong the displacement effect is. Or you can, if you have a pressure sensitive tablet, the pressure of that will affect that as well. ZBrush has a few features for creating alphas from 3D models as well. So what I could show you is, say we've got this model of a lion, which is a public domain model. If I want to create a stamp image of this model, I could do that directly in this program by going to alpha, make alpha Bas Relief, and make Bas Relief alpha. So this will convert the selected tool into a Bas Relief alpha. The alpha will be determined by the model's angle to the camera and the above settings. So these sliders will change the result of so you can mess about with that. Basically you just press this button, and then you're left with an image here that you can then drag out onto another model. So like that. Now the result of this make alpha is it's not bad. I mean, it's done the job. It's quite angular, and when I experimented with a few different models, I wasn't really that impressed by the native result in ZBrush. So I did try experimenting with Blender, and I developed my own method of making alpha images from 3D models with that. I suppose as an introduction I could show you that method. So this next bit's going to get a little bit technical, but basically the software that I use in this process to do it without the use of ZBrush is called Blender, and I also use a software called Krita, which is a 2D painting program, and that's a free open source software as well. But there's another software I do use called PixPlant, and that one is not free. I did pay for that one, but it's not very expensive. So in the next video I'll show you the process for doing that. Thanks for watching. Right, hello again. So here I am in Blender. I'm currently still using the 3.6 version. You can use a newer version if you like, but I did find that because I had some files, well, basically, to cut a long story short, when I tried a newer version of Blender a few months ago, it seemed to crash a lot for me, and I just decided to go back to the 3.6 version. It might be fine now. I think a few other people did report some problems with it that have probably been resolved, but I'm just going to stick with this version for now because I don't like to keep having to update software all the time. It gets a bit time consuming anyway, so that out of the way. So this is my file I use to make alphas from 3D objects in Blender. So here, this is the layout window, the 3D viewport, and I've got a model of a squirrel I made here, and basically it looks all normal mappy because I've got the normal matcap on, and that's set to object color, and I've set the background color of the viewport to the neutral sort of flat normal color. So that's that hex if you need to know what that is. 7F7FFF. So, and the other thing about Blender for doing this, you have to make sure is that you've got your colour management settings to sRGB and standard, not filmic, not any of these other things, just standard. Otherwise it won't look right at all. I'm just using the Eevee render thing. It doesn't really matter because I'm just rendering from this viewport anyway, so it's not really doing any real-time rendering or anything at the moment. If I want to go back to the camera view, I press 0 on my numpad, and I'll show you. I've got the output setting here. I've set it, the camera, I've set it to 2048 by 2048 pixels. We've got PNG set to 16 color depth. Probably don't need the RGBA. I could probably set it to just RGB, but may as well. What else? This is the node setup for this object. Just the materials. I found that in the viewport, how to explain, this is a this is not a decimated object. This is a retopologized object that I've applied textures to make it look like it's higher detail than it is. And what I found was, in order for that to show in this viewport view with the matcaps and everything that I want, I had to add a subdivision surface modifier and a displacement map modifier. Otherwise, what you see will just be just the basic sort of no details, no nice smoothing. That's just the low polygon model. So the reason I did this was that I found that trying to open big models in Blender could crash Blender, or just takes ages and ages, and they take ages to render, and it's not very well optimized for doing very large models. So you have to think about optimization, especially if you're going to use lots of multiple objects. Although another way around this is to decimate high resolution models, and I have got a few examples here as well. So if I just hide that and then I show these up, there we go. So I've actually got a whole scene here. I'm not sure if he's a decimated one. He must be a high resolution one. Yeah, he's a... Sorry, I'm just thinking aloud. yeah, that's the, see, so it looks a bit jagged because he's got some decimated polygons going on. I think I hid, yeah. I'm not quite sure what's going on there. There we go, there's the wireframe, so it's quite a dense mesh. I'll just hide him. So I've got this other squirrel I did. This is one of my earlier models. So that's just the geometry as it is. There's no displacement modifier or anything on that. And I must have combined these objects into this one object, and then I've I did pose him, so I will have used a lower resolution model at some point and then rigged it and posed it, and then I applied a displacement modifier to it to add the details, and then I've exported that, applied the modifiers so that it's all just a posed object. So that was another workflow I had to figure out how to do, but I thought it would be quite useful for making bas reliefs. Back to the subject matter here. Anyway, we're not going to look at this squirrel. We're going to import the lion model from the last video. So I have to find him. Let's see. So this is quite a decimated model. It's not too... didn't take very long to load at all. So I definitely would recommend you open decimated models for this, or not the highest resolution that you might do in ZBrush, because that will definitely crash Blender unless you've got an amazing supercomputer. But I don't. I've got quite an entry level. I mean, it's not a bad computer, but it's not an RTX or anything, and it's good enough for what I need. But let's just say I'm not going to be playing Cyberpunk on the full settings on it, so. Anyway, we've got this lion, and I want to make sure that the camera is on him. So I'm going to orient him in the viewport. Get my camera. Say, which camera am I using here? I'm using object camera. Just hide that one so I'm not confused. And if I go Control Alt and 0 on the numpad, I can set it to be facing at the object. Then I click on the object, go to View, Align Active Camera to Selected. So now we've got him in the viewport. I can render an image of the lion, so he's just, it's not really got a, I need to set a material for him. Although this is sort of optional really, but let's make him red. So now I've got my red lion. Go to image, save that, and I'll put it in a new folder. Call him lion diffuse. I don't need RGBA. I'll just leave that as it is though, because it doesn't really matter. And then what I need to do is go to view, viewport, render image, and then I've got the normal map. And I'm naming these so that I don't get too confused, because this process is quite confusing if you don't keep things organized. So then I go to Compositing tab, and this is slightly optional, but I did find that if I had a depth map version of the image and then I later combined it with the normal map, it sort of slightly improved things, but it's sort of debatable as to whether it does or not. It's or you could just use this image on its own, but what I did find with the normal map image was that it gives better details than just this alone. But anyway, I've got in my compositing node tree got my render layers, and so the invert, well, if that wasn't on, it would be the other way around, which I could do. Doesn't really matter actually. But for the process I'm going to show you, I'm going to leave it the way I've got it here. I'm just going to render the image again, because after you render it, this is when this will show up. It won't show until you hit the render. And then in the this is a UV editor, and the way you save the image out is you go to image and save as, and then I'm going to call that lion depth. So we've got 3 images. Now the next stage, I'm going to go to PixPlant, which is a software I use to make repeating textures, and you can make different texture maps from images and things with it. I've just got the freelancer version. So I want to go to base color, and I need to put the diffuse image in here. So I'm just going to drag and drop him there. I'm just going to press OK. And then this is like the optional step with the depth map. So I'm sorry if this is a little bit confusing, but it's because it is confusing. So I get the depth displacement, and then because I've got base and I've got another map, I can make more maps using the extract 3D maps. And I want to make a normal map from the displacement map. So I'm just going to press start, and this still isn't using the displacement map, this is just actually using the diffuse image to create this. So what you've got to do is click this from shading and then select the displacement map, and then that's using the displacement map. And the other thing I found was that I had to invert it. I'll leave that on 0. And you can increase the strength of it. So if I press the sharper button, it will show more details. The only thing with this is you have all these very jaggy sort of details here. So maybe I want to press smooth a few times. So now I've got that normal map from the depth image that I rendered out. I go to save normal as and find where I have my line, and this is where it gets confusing. So this is the normal map from the depth map. So I've got line depth, and I'm going to call it line depth normal. Save that. And then now that I've got that, I'm going to go into another program called Krita. I don't know if this is the latest version of this software either. It's just the one I've got installed at the moment. I'm going to drag and drop the image I just made into here. And then I'm going to take this, the normal map that I rendered in Blender, and drag it on top of here, insert as new image layer. Now, I'm not entirely sure whether it's better to do one normal map on top of the other one, or you might have to experiment with this, but basically the idea here is to combine the normal maps together. So Blender has got a combine normal map mode in its layer system, and you may need to dig around in it to find that, and it's remember where it is exactly. It's in one of these menus. There you go. It's in MISC and it's combined normal map. So once you've got that ticked, it'll show up in your list of layer modes. So I'm going to select that, and then it won't look any different until you drag the opacity slider. So basically by dragging that down, I'm seeing the normal map below it, and it's sort of mixing the normals together. And as I say, this may well be an optional sort of step, but I'm sure from my previous experiments, combining them sort of helped the result a little bit. So I found around 70 or so is not a bad value to mix them. And then I just export that out. So I'm going to call it line depth normal mix. And then we have to go back into PixPlant. So I'm going to close this normal. I'm going to close this displacement. I'm going to leave my base colour. And then I'm going to drag and drop the mix into here. And now I want to create a displacement map from the normal. So I'm going to tick displacement. And it's not using the normal yet. So I need to select this, and then I need to select normal map. And then that is the resulting height map. And this is a sort of a preview of what that will look like. If I hide the base, you can see that's just the displaced details there. So now what I need to do is go File, Save Displacement. I've ended up in a folder which isn't the right one. So I need to find this, and I'm going to call it line depth. Actually, no, I'm just going to call it line height. Of course, I don't want the background to be all like these different colours. I want the background around the lion to be black. So I'm going to go back into Krita and drag this in. Find my diffuse. And then get my selection thing, magic wand. Well, it's called the contiguous selection tool here, so you have to make it really complicated. So and I click a colour and then shift click another colour, shift click and shift click. Now I've got all the white areas selected. Go to select, invert selection, click on the height map, and I've got a shortcut set up to add a new transparency mask, but you can go add transparency mask there, hide that. Now I need to have a black background, so I'm using the fill bucket tool, and there's our black background. Then I'm going to save that, and I'm just going to save it over this image because it's easier. So that's the height map now. So that's how I make alphas using Blender, PixPlant and Krita. If there was a way to make well, there are free methods to make normal maps into this sort of height map, but this program is the best for doing that I've found, although I haven't tried the result in Substance Painter yet, so maybe that's a better way. Again though, that's a paid program, so it's really up to you. You can use free programs to do it as well, but it's really up to your preference what you want to do. I mean, you don't need to use Krita to do, well actually you do need to use Krita because that's for the combined normal map thing, which I found was very good. But all the other editing, you can use Photoshop or you could use Affinity to do it. So basically now we've got this image, what do we do with it? So I can show you the result in ZBrush. That's probably the most direct way to do it. So I'm going to have a plane object, drag that out, go to edit, make polymeshed, geometry, let's give this about 6. I could have put it on, got rid of that actually, then that wouldn't have had the smooth rounded edges, but it doesn't really matter for this. I'm going to import my alpha image, the lion I just did. I do apologise if I sound a bit funny. I've had a bit of a flu for the last week, but it's pretty much gone now. Where was I? Those. So we need the height map image or the alpha. See, so now you can see the black background becomes transparent. So I'm going to set my focal shift down to -100. I'm going to leave, well, I'll just increase that a bit. Have it on drag rectangle. if I drag the line out, that's the result of the alpha. So it's a bit nicer than the native ZBrush version that I showed you, although we do have lots of jaggy looks a bit jaggy edges things, but that might be because the model wasn't perfectly smooth. It was what do you call it? Sorry, it's just gone. Anyway, so that's the basic procedure for making alphas from 3D objects with those programs outside of ZBrush. So I think for scientific reasons we should compare the result again by getting the lion back in here. So if I import my lion, so there he is. That's the word I was thinking, decimated. It's a decimated model, so it's not very smooth. So the result will probably, that's going to affect the result of the alpha in some way. I mean, you could always just smooth the image out in a editing program and it might improve it slightly. Anyway, we've got this lion, so I want to orient him in a similar way, and then go to alpha, Bas Relief, make Bas Relief. So now I've got the Bas Relief that ZBrush has made. I'm going to go back to my lion. I'm going to go back. So I'm dragging out the ZBrush one now. So there he is. And then the one I imported. We've got slightly better sort of details, and it doesn't look as angular. So that's sort of what I was trying to explain. Anyway, so that's another way to make alpha images, and then you can still use them in ZBrush, so you get the best of both worlds. Anyway, in fact, you could use it in any other software that uses these sort of images. So you could displace geometry in Blender with the heightmap, or you could use 3D Coat or Pixel CNC. Talking about CNC programs, things like Carvico, they use heightmap images. I think Fusion 360 has a way of using heightmap images. They're quite useful. So thanks for watching that. In the next video I'm going to discuss another software that I've just found that makes this process about 10 times easier and gives a really nice result. So please stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching.